here. How about this? Not that you can't hear me anyway, but how's that? Good morning. Good morning. I kind of feel like I was looking across the auditorium this morning, and I feel like y'all intentionally socially distanced from me or Mike, one or the other. I don't know who you're concerned about. It's Bridget. Now I understand. We do thank you for gathering with us this morning. This is the gathering of Holiday Bible Church. We are here to worship the Lord together, and we are excited to do just that. I think the only announcement we have for you is an upcoming family meeting that's going to take place January 31st. So we're in the pattern of having family meetings on Wednesday night. It's been a little bit more convenient to do it that way, but being the yearly budget meeting, and there's a couple of other larger items that we want to be able to share with you. So it's going to be on a Sunday during what would typically be our Discovering God hour. So we'll have our worship service as normal, and then we're going to transition after that into the family meeting after a brief break. So if you can be here, we would love for you to be here. If not, at least plan on participating via the online streaming option, and that way you can stay up to date with what is going on. We're going to turn our attention to worship, and my passage is up there, so I'm going to transition myself back up here. All right. Psalm 119, the author writes, "My soul longs for your salvation. I hope in your word. My eyes long for your promise. I ask, when will you comfort me? For I have become like a wineskin in the smoke, yet I have not forgotten your statutes. How long must your servant endure? When will you judge those who persecute me? The insolent have dug pitfalls for me. They do not live according to your law. All your commandments are sure. They persecute me with falsehood. Help me. They have almost made an end of me on earth, but I have not forsaken your precepts. In your steadfast love, give me life, that I may keep the testimonies of your mouth." Folks, I think in that short passage, we have the story, the themes of Ruth embedded in this brief little text. The providence of God that often leads us into trouble and suffering. Yet that same providence is kind towards us and ultimately works for our redemption and for our hope and for our glory. And it is in that hope that we come this morning, we fix our attention on the risen Christ, who is our Redeemer, who is our hope, who is worthy of all of our worship. So let's fix our attention on him this morning as we bow and settle our hearts in preparation. Let's pray together. Lord God, you are worthy of all of our worship. For you are sovereign over all creation. You are sovereign over all the earth. And you are guiding and leading us through history to accomplish your purpose. And your purposes are good. Lord, help our faith to increase. Encourage us during this hour as we fix our eyes on you. May you in turn enlarge our hearts. Supply us the grace that we need through a better, clearer, closer walk with you. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All creatures of our God and King, lift up your voice and with us sing, "Oh, praise him." Alleluia. Stand please to sing. All creatures of our God and King, lift up your voice him in humbleness. Oh, praise him. Hallelujah. Praise, praise the Father, praise the Son, and praise the Spirit, three in one. Oh, praise him. Oh, praise him. Hallelujah. 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 All the redeemed washed by his blood, come and rejoice in his great love. Oh, praise him. Hallelujah. Christ has defeated every sin. Amen. Cast all your burdens now on him. Oh, praise him. Oh, praise him. Hallelujah. 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 Oh, hallelujah. 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 Oh, hallelujah. 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 He shall return in power to reign. Heaven and earth will join to say, oh, praise him. Hallelujah. Then who shall fall on bended knee? All creatures of our God and King. Oh, praise him. Oh, praise him. Hallelujah. 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 I come, God, I come. Return to the Lord, the one who's broken, the one who's torn me apart. You struck down to bind me up. You say you do it all in love, that I might know you in your suffering. And though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship, sing a song to the one who's all I need. My heart and flesh may fail, the earth below give way. With my eyes, I'll see the Lord. Lifted high upon that day, behold the Lamb that was slain. And I'll know every tear was worth it all. And though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, Though tonight I'm crying out, let this cup pass from me now. You're still more than I need. You're enough for me. You're enough for me. And though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. And though you ruin me, still I will worship. Sing a song to the one who's all I need. Sing a song to the one who's all I need. Amen. You can be seated.
Good morning and Burr. We're going to be reading from Mark chapter 14, verses 1 through 11, so please follow along. And it was now 2 days before the Passover and the feast of unleavened bread. And the chief priest and the scribes were seeking how to arrest him by stealth and kill him. For they said, not during the feast, lest there be an uproar from the people. And while he was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he was reclining at table, a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment, of pure nard, very costly, and she broke the flask and poured it over his head. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, "Why was the ointment wasted like that? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor." And they scolded her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." Then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray him to them. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And he sought an opportunity to betray him.
Creation sings the Father's song. He calls the sun to wake the dawn and run the course of day till evening falls in crimson rain. His fingerprints on flakes of snow, his breath upon the spinning globe. He charts the eagle's flight, commands the newborn baby's cry. Hallelujah, let all creation stand and sing. Hallelujah, fill the earth with songs of worship, tell the wonders of creation's King. Creation gazed upon his face, the ageless one in time's embrace, unveiled the Father's plan of reconciling God and man. A second Adam walked the earth, whose blameless life would break the curse, whose death would set us free to live with him eternally. Hallelujah, creation longs for his return. When Christ shall reign upon the earth, the bitter wars that rage are birth pains of a coming age. When he will rule land and sky, all heaven will sing and earth reply with one resplendent theme, the glory of our God and King. Hallelujah. Let all creation stand and sing. Hallelujah. Fill the earth with songs of worship. Tell the wonders of creation's King. Hallelujah. Let all creation stand and sing. Hallelujah. Fill the earth with songs of worship. Tell the wonders of creation's King. There is love that came for us, humbled to a sinner's cross. You broke my shame and sinfulness. You rose again, victorious. Faithfulness none can deny. Through the storm and through the fire, there is truth that sets me free. Jesus Christ who lives in me. You are stronger, you are stronger. Sin is broken, you have saved me. It is written, Christ is risen. Jesus, you are Lord of all. No beginning and no end. You're my hope and my defense. You came to seek and save the lost. You paid it all upon the cross. You are stronger, you are stronger. Sin is broken, you have saved me. It is written, Christ is risen. Jesus, you are Lord of all. So let your name be lifted higher, be lifted higher, be lifted higher. So let your name be lifted higher, be lifted higher, be lifted higher. So let your name be lifted higher, be lifted higher, be lifted higher. You are stronger, you are stronger. Sin is broken, you have saved me. It is written, Christ is risen. Jesus, you are Lord of all. You are stronger, you are stronger. Sin is broken, you have saved me. It Jesus, you are the Lord of all creation. In you all things were made, and in you all things hold together. Jesus, you not only created us, but you redeemed us by your blood. We're here this morning to worship you, to sing of your cross and the mercy that was demonstrated there when you died in our place, so that we could have an eternal relationship with you and the Spirit and the Father for all eternity. God, if there's anyone here this morning who is not currently a believer in Jesus, I pray that today would be the day when you work in their lives in such a way as to bring them to the saving knowledge of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. It's in his name that we pray. Amen. There's a place. There's a place where mercy reigns and never dies. There's a place where streams of grace flow deep and wide, where all the love I've ever found comes like a flood, comes flowing down. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of you. Where your love ran red and my sin washed white, I owe all to you. I owe all to you, Jesus. There's a place where sin and shame are powerless, where my heart has peace with God and forgiveness, where all the love I've ever found comes like a flood, comes flowing down. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in all to you. I'm in all of you. Where your love ran red and my sin washed white, I owe all to you. I owe all to you. Here my hope is found, here on holy ground. Here I bow down, here I bow down. Here arms open wide, here you save my life. Here I bow down, here I bow down. Here my hope is found, here on holy ground. Here I bow down, here I bow down. Here arms open wide, here you save my life. Here I bow down, here I bow. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of you. Where your love went red and my sin washed white, I owe all to you. I owe all to you. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of you. I'm in awe of you. Where your love ran red and my sin washed white, I owe all to you. I owe all to you, Jesus. Amen.
We are in awe of him this morning. And I think even through a book as simple and ordinary as Ruth, to see the providence of God working behind the scenes is awesome to us. It is awe-inspiring. And just by way of a brief review, we have seen that providence through the suffering of God's people in chapter 1. As we sang that song together, "Though You Slay Me," I couldn't help but think of this little family and the grief, the sorrow, the loss, the tragedy that they endured while in Moab. And yet they returned broken, empty, and at least for a time, without hope. Yet chapter 2, we see the providence of God, which brings us the kindness of God. And all of a sudden, through the ordinary, everyday, get up and go to work kind of life, Ruth meets somebody, and he is exceedingly kind to her and to her mother-in-law. God is working behind the scenes to bring about his intended purpose. And I think what we're going to see in the final 2 chapters of the book of Ruth is the providence of God, which provides for us, ultimately, a redeemer. God's providence working not just to satisfy our longings and needs here and now, but our deepest need. The need to be saved, rescued, bought back out of our bondage and out of our trouble. God's providence is working in the lives of his people towards that end. Now, I want to review a couple important concepts before we dive into chapter 3, because I had an internal wrestling, and there's part of me that really wanted to cover this book briefly and in broad strokes, but I'm really just incapable of doing that. So as we chop the book up, though I realize the problem with that is we can tend to lose sight of some of the historical context, and there are some strange things going on that we're not very familiar with, and so we have to kind of come back to those and just make sure we understand what's taking place in the story. So there are 3 things I want us to go back and touch on and just make sure we understand what is going on. One is a law that was given to Israel that was called the law of the Levirate marriage. You say, what is that? I don't even think we've brought this term up yet, but it's something you find in Deuteronomy chapter 25. The Hebrew word levir, is the term for brother-in-law. So the Levirate law had to do with a brother whose wife passes away, who is left without an heir. So there was no son in the picture. And so potentially with the death of this man, his family name is going to end. And so this law said that his brother was to marry his widowed wife, and the first son that they would conceive together would take the name of the deceased man. So the family lineage would continue, and they would continue also to possess the land that God had given to them. So it served those two purposes. The continuation of the family line and their ownership of the land allotted to them by God's decree, but it also ensured that the widow was taken care of, which shows God's heart for these individuals, particularly the widows, who in those days would have been left with really no security whatsoever during those times. And it showed his commitment to uphold his end of the covenant, that the land belonged to Israel, and he would see to it that it continued that way. It's a strange law to us, though. As I was doing a little digging, a little researching, even last night, because I wondered, what about modern day Israel? I mean, there's Orthodox Jews out there. Like, do they still follow this law? But they do not. They have since kind of set aside this law. They still recognize it, but they recommend, encourage, and even in many areas demand that if you're the brother, you refuse the right and you free your brother's widow to marry whoever she would like. Strange law. Doesn't make much sense to us. But it was God's kindness to those people to do so. The second term is this, and it also comes from the law, and it is the idea of a kinsman redeemer. A kinsman redeemer. The kinsman redeemer was a male relative who had both the responsibility and really the privilege to act on behalf of a family member who was in trouble, right? So they're in great need. Maybe they had sold themselves into slavery to pay off a debt. Maybe they had lost their home and their land because of a bad debt. The kinsman redeemer had the responsibility of coming into that situation and buying back the debt, caring for, vindicating for the needs of his close relative, right? That was the role of the kinsman redeemer. He provided for the safety and security of those in his family who were in need, right? Has already played a role. This has already come up. Naomi told Ruth, hey, stay with Boaz. He is a kinsman, right? Naomi's mind is already working here. She's already seeing the possibilities. By the way, if you want to read up on that, you can find some of the expectations of this kinsman redeemer in Leviticus 25. Do a little homework assignment. Third is a word that we've already used, and I've used it a bunch, and that's the word providence. But it's a word that I don't know that we use it all that often anymore, and I think that's kind of a shame, but when we do use it, I'm not sure that we fully understand what it means, and so I want to remind us of what the word providence means. Providence simply means that God is working powerfully to control all of history and all of creation in order to accomplish his purpose. It's what we saw last week in Hebrews chapter 3, where it says that Jesus is carrying, he is bearing all things together by the word of his power. In other words, he's bringing all of creation and all of history, and he's carrying it forward to the purpose for which he created it. Right? So everything is working for his purpose. And what is that purpose? It's the glory of God. And that glory of God will be accomplished through the ultimate and final defeat of evil and the salvation, the redemption of God's people, a people for himself. The providence of God. The interesting thing about the providence of God is it's often working behind the scenes. It's not always that visible. It often just looks like normal, ordinary life. Get up, go to work, come home, take care of the family, go to bed, do it all over again the next day, right? And yet behind the scenes, God is moving, God is working, God is controlling and orchestrating in order to accomplish his purpose. And in our story, God's providence has already been seen working behind the scenes in order to bring redemption to a family and ultimately to the world through that family. But now let's go to chapter 3 of Ruth. And let's continue our story together. By the way, as we do, I don't often use alliteration. I'm not a terribly big fan of alliteration, but I couldn't help myself on this one, right? So I got 5 P's for you this morning. You ready? Not just P's, they're PRs, they're purrs, okay? We've got a plan, a proposal, a promise, a problem, and a provision, all right? Amen. That'll preach. We could probably say amen and go home right now, right? Chapter 3, verse 1. Hang on, because I'm in 1 Samuel, and that is not going to help us. Chapter 3, verse 1. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Is not Boaz our relative, our kinsman, with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor." In other words, the time for harvesting had ended. The time of threshing is now beginning. So here's the plan. Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself. Which, by the way, not a bad idea when you're going to go propose to somebody. Okay? It's a really practical story. Okay? Showers are good, deodorant's good, perfume is great. Most of the time, not too much though, okay? Easy. Wash therefore and anoint yourself, put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Smart woman, right? Let the man finish his meal. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Also really important, okay? Make sure it's Boaz. You don't want to mess this up. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. All right, there's the plan. You got it? It's detailed. It's really weird. Okay, this is a strange plan, and it is risky on a number of different levels. So what's going on? Let's see if we can put this together for us. See if we can kind of paint the picture. It's the end of the harvest, right? Which means it's probably been at least several weeks, if not a couple of months, that has passed from chapter 2 to this point in chapter 3. Some time has gone by here. Boaz had initially taken initiative in showing kindness to Ruth. He protected her. He provided for her needs, but he hadn't really made a move, if you know what I mean, right? Like that's as far as it went. The anticipation of chapter 2 is that this guy is interested. He seems apparently attracted, but then nothing happens. I mean, all of the harvesting ended, and everything just kind of goes on as it was. Did we read him wrong? Did we misunderstand? He never asked her on a date, which I love, by the way. I think Boaz is just a normal dude, right? Normal dude, pretty girl. He's probably a little older, intimidated. He shows her kindness, and that's as far as he can bring himself to go, right? I listed a few reasons here why maybe he hesitated, right? He does appear to be older. That might have been a reason for his hesitation. Many people think Ruth might have been in her early 20s at this point, maybe mid-20s at most. Boaz could have been more, in his 40s maybe. He's a bit older than Ruth. It appears that he thinks Ruth is out of his league, right? When we come a little bit further down in chapter 3, his response to Ruth is, "You have made this last kindness greater than the first, and that you have not gone after young men." That word young can literally mean choice, all right? In other words, you're not gone after better-looking guys, though you probably could have, whether rich or poor. Another reason possibly for the hesitation was the fact that she was a Moabite. She's not an Israelite. This might be going over in Boaz's mind. Like, is this really okay for one? Should I? Is it prudent? Is it wise? Boaz is a worthy man. He is a very careful man. And perhaps this was a consideration for him. Another very practical possibility here is that it seems as if Ruth may have still been wearing the clothes of a grieving widow. A lot of commentators think this is why Naomi adds that little phrase in there, put on your cloak, right? Put on a change of clothes is how some translations put it. And it may be that up until this point, Ruth was still wearing whatever attire, whatever garments a widow would have worn during the period of grieving. And so if that's the case, maybe Boaz was respecting her grief and giving her space and time to grieve, letting her take the opportunity to tell him when she is ready. And whatever the reason, time has passed. And the hope that we were left with at the end of chapter 2 seems to be fading a little bit here. Doesn't pan out. It doesn't. The story doesn't progress the way maybe that we expect. But nonetheless, this is a risky plan, right? Naomi decides to kick things into gear, to put things into action, but it's risky. And when she tells Ruth to go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do, that sounds a little salacious, maybe? For lack of a better term? This, by the way, has led a lot of people to read into this story that Naomi is encouraging a sexual encounter between Ruth and Boaz. But I don't think that makes much sense. I think you actually have to read that into the story. Now, it is true, technically, with the words that are used and the locations, technically it could mean that. But you know, when you're reading a story, there's context for a reason. And I think the author of this little story has been very careful to craft the character of Ruth and Boaz in such a way to make that kind of an encounter just seem really unnatural. It really doesn't fit. Either way, it's not a plan we're likely to recommend to our daughters, okay? It's important to know sometimes, by the way, that in narratives, when we're reading stories, historical accounts in the Bible, those narratives do not always give us things that are like, hey, you should do this, right? They're not always prescribing for us what we should do. The authors are often just describing for us events that took place, and a lot of times they don't even give us any commentary on the rightness or wrongness of those events. Which means then we have to take the rest of the context of Scripture and apply it to that narrative in order to understand how we should respond. Okay? Now, it's important for us in the book of Ruth. It was important for us in the book of Judges. And it's going to be important for us again in the book of Acts here in a few weeks. We have to remember a lot of things are descriptive, not prescriptive, okay, when it comes to those narratives. It's a risky plan, though, okay? Let me just lay out why this is so risky. Number one, Boaz could have taken her actions as an invitation to sin. It could have been taken as Ruth creating an opportunity for sin. And he could have pushed things in that direction. The flip side of that, being a worthy man, he could have accused Ruth of prostitution. It was not uncommon during the threshing season where people were staying on the threshing floors and they would party and kind of revel in the hand of God, the sovereignty, the provision that God had given them, and in this bounty that they have harvested for prostitutes to make their way into this environment and make themselves available. A poor interpretation by Boaz here could have interpreted this as Ruth, a foreigner, making herself available, which means he could have publicly humiliated her and perhaps even cost her her life. It's really risky. he could have just taken the opportunity to assault her. I mean, if we knew nothing of Boaz's character to this point, if we're just reading like, hey, this is during the time of the judges where every man is doing that which was right in his own eyes, we've already seen how that goes for women in a culture. They're abused and misused and undervalued. And by the way, we've already seen in this very story the reality of this kind of danger for Ruth. You remember Boaz tells the young man working in his field, you do not touch her. And then you remember Naomi tells Ruth, hey, it's good for you to hang out with Boaz's workers lest you go to another field and someone attack you. I mean, for goodness sakes, folks, if it's not safe for a woman to go to work in broad daylight in a field, how safe is it for her to go uncover the feet of a man at night and lay down with him? It's a risky plan. It's risky just from a relational aspect, isn't it? I mean, she's taking a bold step here. She's pressing the issue of this relationship. What if such a bold approach doesn't sit well with Boaz? What if he doesn't like such a forward type of woman? What if we've misinterpreted his intentions all along? What if he just wants to be friends and help? I don't know if you've had a friend, or maybe you yourself has been in that kind of relationship, right? Like you thought it was friendship, they interpreted it as something different, and all of a sudden when you realize they interpreted it as something different, the friendship gets super awkward at that point. And maybe the friendship doesn't even survive because of the awkwardness. They're taking a great risk here. But Ruth agrees to everything Naomi says. She replied, all that you say, I will do, right? It's a risky plan. Now, I want us to think for just a minute about why Naomi would encourage such a risky plan. What does it mean that she would make such bold plans for Ruth? I think it tells us two things that are really, really important. Number one, it tells us that Naomi's hope has been rekindled. Naomi's hope has been rekindled. Why? Because those who see no hope find themselves incapable of making plans for a better future. Right? I mean, this is just one of the debilitating aspects of depression. When you see no hope, you're not really excited about thinking about the future at all. And when you do think about the future, it's all doom and gloom. Naomi's been there, right? Remember chapter 1, verse 11, her response to her two daughters, Orpah and Ruth. Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. I see no hope. So don't even come with me. I have nothing for you. What has changed in Naomi from chapter 1 to now chapter 3, verse number 1? You know what's changed? Hope. And what has brought about that hope? The providential hand of God working in her life and in the life of her daughter-in-law. Her hope has been rekindled in the Lord, and she begins planning for a bright future, making bold plans. Second thing it tells us, though, is that Naomi's hope here really hinges entirely on Boaz, doesn't it? I mean, if Naomi has misinterpreted Boaz's kindness and integrity, this thing could turn out to be a real disaster. Naomi is making bold plans because God has rekindled her hope, but she is taking that hope here and putting it on what she is interpreting Boaz to be. He becomes the key figure, this potential redeemer. And man, that's not unlike our hope in Christ at all, is it? As Christians, we encourage one another to hope, and as one pastor puts it, one of the reasons we must help each other hope in God is that only hopeful churches plan and strategize. Churches that feel no hope develop a maintenance mentality and just go through the motions year in and year out. But when a church feels the sovereign kindness of God hovering overhead and moving, hope starts to thrive, and righteousness ceases to be simply the avoidance of evil and becomes active and strategic. That's what hope does in a church, is what hope does in the hearts of God's people, and it overflows into the church as we sense the kind providence of God hovering over us, waiting to burst forth into rain. So very practically, we have a family meeting coming up at the end of January. And you know what? In hope, we want to make some plans for the future. Understanding that the success of those plans depends entirely upon our Redeemer. He's the hinge. We will make plans, and if they succeed, is entirely dependent upon Him. But we will step out in faith and make those plans, knowing the integrity and the ability of the one in whom we trust. And folks, some plans are risky, and some of the plans that we're going to put in front of you a few weeks from now are a bit risky. But we are dependent on the kindness, the integrity, and the redeeming power of the Lord Jesus, and that frees us to take some biblically motivated risks and to do so without fear. Not because they're guaranteed to succeed in the way that we anticipate that they might succeed, but knowing that whatever God does with those plans, it is His providential hand that is at work. Which means He has our best interest in mind. He has His own glory in mind. And He will succeed in His plans. All that to say, I hope you join us in a few weeks, particularly if you are a member. Well, that's the plan. Let's go to P number 2, the proposal. Look at verse number 6. So Ruth went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk and his heart was merry, he went to lie down, and at the end of the heap of grain, then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. By the way, I love this picture of Boaz. I love that the author pauses for just a minute to give us a glimpse of the joy, the happiness, and merriment of Boaz. Because sometimes I think that we think if we're going to be righteous people, godly people, truly Christian church-type people, that we're just going to be somber and kind of melancholy and maybe even a little bit miserable because that might make God happy. And that's just the way life is going to be. And this picture of Boaz just flies in the face of that. This picture of Boaz is we rejoice in the bountiful goodness of God, and we can be merry with one another and enjoy the goodness of God in this life. To do so is both good and God-honoring. I was thinking back to some of the gatherings that we had, and I know some of them we've been restricted in this year. Our muscles, when it comes to gathering together, when it comes to fellowship, those fellowshipping muscles are a little bit weak, right? We haven't really flexed them in a while, or at least not like we used to, but we took some of those opportunities over the holidays, and man, the joy of just gathering together with God's people and rejoicing in His goodness through the year, it's amazing. You should try it. Ruth follows everything that her mother-in-law instructs her to do. She waits until Boaz is asleep, and she sneaks over and uncovers his feet. And this is sort of like she takes the garment they would have kind of wrapped up in their garment to sleep in. She takes that garment, she moves it off of his feet, off of his legs. Why? Practical reason. Why would she have done that, by the way? Right? It gets a little chilly at night. and all of a sudden your feet are uncovered, eventually you're going to wake up, right? If you weren't warm enough last night, your feet were hanging out of your blanket, and you're like me and you're stubbornly just don't like to turn the heat on, it's going to wake you up. But you can feel the tension, though, can't you? Ruth uncovers his feet. She lies down. We know this is risky. What's going to happen? And man, I bet the minutes felt like hours to her. As she lay there wondering what was going to happen. What's he going to say when he wakes up? I'm sure she's running countless scenarios through her mind. What will I do if he's angry or put off? How should I respond if he says yes and acts favorably? It's been a minute. What if he doesn't wake up? What then? Man, I imagine her heart just racing every time he shifts a little bit or every time she senses a change in his breathing pattern. And maybe it was the chill from the cool night that ultimately startled him out of his sleep, or maybe his foot bumped against a body that wasn't there when he went to sleep. That might wake you up too. Either way, the Lord causes Boaz to wake up with a start. And verse 8 tells us at midnight the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant." And now Ruth goes off script, right? She did everything Naomi told her to do, but now she improvises a bit. Naomi said, "Hey, you wake him up, and then he's going to tell you what to do." But Naomi improvises and says, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings, your garment over your servant, for you are a redeemer." She's deviated from the plan. And again, her response is a little strange to us. It's again caused some to wonder if her intentions really were pure in going to the threshing floor that night. But listen, the only other place in the Old Testament where we get this phrase, "spread your garment over somebody," is in Ezekiel 16, verse number 8. I want to read it to you. This is God speaking to Israel through the prophet. He said, "When I passed by you again and saw you, behold, you were at the age for love. And I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. I made my vow to you and entered into a covenant with you, declares the Lord God, and you became mine." In other words, God uses the image of spreading his garment over Israel as a picture of his entering into a covenantal relationship of love with them. A covenant whereby he would be their God and they would be his people. A covenant where he would be their provider and protector. A covenant where he would act as their redeemer. And if you read the context of Ezekiel 8, it is clearly in connection with God's redemption of Israel. They are seen as dirty and bloody and naked and helpless, and it is God who comes along and rescues them out of that filth. And the picture he uses is the spreading of his garment over Israel. You are mine. This covenant that God enters into with Israel, by the way, is often compared to a marriage. The New Testament picks up the same imagery to describe the new covenant that exists between Christ and his church. As a matter of fact, Ephesians chapter 5 says the marriage that you enjoy today, right now on this earth, is but a picture of the relationship that Christ enjoys with his people. Now, some of you may have noticed a particular translation of Ruth that actually says, I think, if you have those little black journaling Bibles in front of you, Ruth actually says, "Spread your wings over me." Other translations say, "Spread your garment over me." It's the same word. In Ezekiel 18, when God says, "I will spread my garment over you," that same word can be translated either wings or garment, depending on the context. And honestly, it could be easily translated either way. The only other place that this word is used in the book of Ruth is in chapter 2, in verse number 12. This is Boaz's response to Ruth. Ruth says, "Why have you shown favor to me?" And Boaz says, I've heard everything that you have done in coming from Israel to care for your mother-in-law. And then he says this, the Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. It's the same word. Ruth is saying, I want you to spread your wings over me. This is not a request for a one-night stand. This was Ruth's way of proposing to Boaz. She's essentially saying, I remember what you said that day when I met you, and I believe that you have wanted to be the wings that God would use to cover me in this life. And so now I'm responding to you by saying, yes, I very much want to belong to you. Boaz has been dropping hints all the way. The way that he spoke to Ruth, the way that he showed extra care for her and Naomi. But he was older and thought that she might prefer someone younger or more handsome or wealthier, and she apparently had the youth and beauty to pursue anyone she wanted. So he showed his love subtly and patiently waited, and finally Naomi and Ruth hatched a plan that was just as humble and subtle as Boaz's initial overtures. And then we have the promise. How does Boaz respond to such a bold request? I want to belong to you, Boaz. Well, Boaz's initial words is not an answer. Verse number 10, he said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. So it's not an answer, but it's really an answer. You have made the last kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask. For all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. And now it is true that I am a redeemer. He calls Ruth a worthy woman. That's the same word, by the way, used in chapter 2 to describe the character of Boaz. She is known to be a woman of integrity in a very short period of time. We mentioned last week that there are a lot of connections between Ruth and Proverbs 31, where we get this description of a worthy woman. I want to give a couple of them to you. Proverbs 31, in case you didn't do the homework, I'll give you a couple of answers to the test. Proverbs 31, verse 10 says, an excellent wife who can find? She is more precious than jewels. That phrase, excellent wife, is the exact same Hebrew phrase as worthy woman, right? Boaz says, you are an excellent wife. You're a worthy woman. Proverbs 31 says, a worthy woman who can find? Boaz is like a founder. I found her. Proverbs 31, verse 31 says, give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. Boaz says, my fellow townsmen all know that you are worthy. You have been praised in the gates. And by the way, he gives her fruits, so to speak, to take with her to Naomi as a blessing for her actions. But just when we think everything is now falling together, right? The love story is just going to blossom. There's going to be this great wedding ceremony. There's a problem, right? Verse number 12. Boaz says, and now it is true that I am a redeemer. However, there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he is not willing to redeem you, then as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until the morning. Right? That's a bit of trouble. There's someone else standing in the way here, Ruth. You want this, I want this. But there's this law, right? And we're going to abide by the law. This is an amazing response by Boaz in a couple of ways. He has found a remarkable woman who is young, beautiful, bold, smart, and most importantly, godly, worthy. She's revealed her interest in him, which, by the way, is not always a given, right? And she's sleeping next to him all night at his feet. Yet Boaz shows incredible resolve to do what is right. Not only does he refuse to give in to the physical temptation that would have been incredibly intense, but he also shows the depth of his commitment to God's law by putting the whole relationship on the line in order to obey that law. Right? There's another Redeemer. He's got first dibs on the land and on Ruth, and Boaz is going to see this through the right way, regardless of what that might mean to his potential marriage to Ruth. He is a man of amazing integrity. He is truly worthy. I wonder, as we look at the resolve of Boaz to be righteous, what does it take to dissolve our resolve to do what is right? How much pressure has to be applied? How much restraint has to be removed in order for our resolve to crumble? In verse number 14, we get, though, this provision that again provides us some hope that things may turn out okay. Verse 14, so she lay at his feet until the morning, but arose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. And he said, bring the garment you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it out, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her. Then she went into the city and went home. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, how did you fare, my daughter? Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me. For he said to me, you must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law. She replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. Boaz has her rise early in the morning before anyone can, it's still kind of dark out. You can't really see who's moving around. He does that in order to protect Ruth's reputation, her own integrity. He sends her home with all this barley, which, by the way, people think this is somewhere between 60 and 90 pounds, that he places on Ruth's back in all likelihood, and she carries that all the way back into town home. Naomi's response to Ruth is interesting. It literally says, who are you, my daughter? Well, that's another weird thing, right? Why would she be like, could she not tell? Could she not see? I don't think that's it. If you go back to, again, chapter 2, when Boaz first meets or sees Ruth, he asks his workers, who is that woman? And they say, she is the Moabitess who has returned with Naomi. And so now I think Naomi is saying, who are you, my daughter? In other words, has your status as the Moabitess who lives with her mother-in-law changed? Are you now engaged? Are you the promised wife of Boaz? Who are you, Ruth? Did the plan work? And the chapter ends with Naomi expressing confidence that Boaz would do everything that he had promised, and he would see to it that day that it is done. Man, don't miss the picture that this is meant to paint for us. Ruth had told her neighbors that God had brought her back from Moab empty. She was husbandless, childless, and hungry. Now, with this abundance of grain, she has plenty to fill her stomach. But more than that, this gift, this extravagant gift, I think was intended to promise, or as a promise from Boaz, that redemption was certain. You will be full of grain. I will meet your needs. Whether through this other Redeemer or whether I myself step in, I will see to it, Naomi, that you are full of grain, that you are full of family, that there are children to carry on the name of your husband. Folks, we are watching the unfolding of God's providential care for his people. Not always easy to see. often subtle and very ordinary, but it is always good, and God will never fail to bring it to pass. Yet this pathway to the glory that God has planned for us may lead us through times of emptiness, times that are heavy with grief and loss. The road is often hard and narrow, but it leads to life everlasting, and all who walk that path are guaranteed to arrive safely. And that guarantee comes by way of the providence of the almighty hand of God. And that pathway is open to us because we too have a kinsman redeemer. One who was born of flesh and blood just like us in order to be our kinsman. One whose life was of infinite worth and was therefore able to pay the infinite cost of our sin. And this he paid with his own blood. Galatians chapter 4 says, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent his own Son, born of a woman, born under the law." Why is that important? Because he needed to be our kinsman in order to redeem us. God sent him, born of a woman, born under the law. Why? To redeem those who were under the law so that we might receive adoption as sons. Do you see the picture? When we look at Boaz, we see a great individual to emulate, to copy, to be like. But when we see through Boaz, we see the kinsman redeemer who was sent for us. One who is powerful to do all that we need him to do. One who has set his affection on us, who will cover us with his wings and provide for us in abundance. Have you trusted this great Redeemer? Is he your Savior this morning? One author says our Redeemer has changed everything. He has changed our status, brought us into intimate union with himself, and given us glorious hope for the future. I think the question this chapter leaves us with is, do you, like Ruth and Naomi, trust the Redeemer to do what is right, to follow through on his covenant, to buy you back, to bring you to glory, to make you his? Do you trust the heart of this Redeemer? That he is gentle and lowly, that he is full of kindness and mercy and love. And that is how he approaches his people. So that we might, in full faith and hope, approach him boldly, knowing that he will meet our needs. He is a great Redeemer. He is worthy of our faith, and he is worthy of our praise. Let's bow before him. Lord, thank you for a great redemption through a great Redeemer. Lord, it's often easy for us to lose sight of your providential kindness that leads us to redemption. We get weighed down with the grief, the pain, the heartache that life on this world, in this earth, brings. Lord, grant us hope, a hope that is fixed firmly on the power and the love of Christ towards his people. And God, through that hope, may we act boldly, knowing that you will never fail any of the promises that you have made to us. Lord, help us to dream big. Lord, may those dreams be saturated with your word. and a desire for the glory of our Redeemer. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Let's stand and sing, "You are stronger, you are stronger. Sin is broken, you have saved me." You are stronger, you are stronger. Sin is broken, you have saved me. It is written, Christ is risen. Jesus, you are Lord of all. You are stronger, you are stronger. Sin is broken, you have saved me. It is written, Christ is risen. Jesus, you are Lord of all. Amen. Hope you have a great week. We'll have our Zoom meeting this Wednesday night. Hope to see you back next Lord's Day. God bless. You are dismissed. Yes, yes. Type Christ. Yes. That's awesome. Yeah. That's right. That's right.